Good afternoon, welcome back to another Coasty Explorers, and we are back after our foray into the outback of Australia. We are here back in the hot, humid, yet glorious Hong Kong, China. Yes, we are back to school. It's the autumn term, back in Hong Kong, and now it's time to make some more Hong Kong videos. And we're going to start today at the wonderful Palace Museum. But before we go in and enjoy the artifacts and the AC that is no doubtedly in that building right now, we need to find out about the journey these treasures took and the race to save the treasures of the Forbidden City. Let's go. Yes, you've all heard of the evacuation of Dunkirk in 1940, but this is quite possibly the greatest wartime evacuation story you've never heard of. To begin our adventure, we need to go back to the year 1911. The last of China's great dynasties, the Qing, finally fell with the young Emperor Puyi being forced to abdicate. Following his abdication, Emperor Puyi was permitted to remain in the Forbidden City as a figurehead. His status was largely symbolic, and he lived there until 1924, when he was expelled during a coup by the warlord Feng Yuxiang. Remarkably, within a year, the once treasures of the emperor were on display at the Palace Museum for all of China to see. Now, you can visit the Palace Museum in Beijing today, and at one time, that Bond actor Roger Moore was the voice of the audio guide. Is he still the voice today? I don't know. Let me know in the comments below if you know. Now, for 8 years, the Palace Museum operated as usual, showing off the treasures of the emperor, but that would all change in 1932. In late 1931, Japan invaded Manchuria in northeastern China. The Japanese suddenly became a great threat. On the 1st of February 1932, Japanese aircraft bombed both the Commercial Press Building and the Oriental Library in Shanghai. This was the first aerial bombing of a civilian population in history, and thousands died, and many works of art and artifacts were destroyed. Now, there was a sudden realization that this could wipe out all of the precious treasures in Beijing. Japanese troops were only 4 hours by road from Beijing, and planes were already overhead too. So an evacuation of the treasures had to happen immediately. It should be noted that China's fear for what may happen to their ancient relics came from the historic events from the previous 80 years. In 1860, during the Second Opium War, the British and French sacked and burned the Emperor's summer palace outside Beijing to the ground, and shipped many items back to London and Paris. And following the Boxer Rebellion in 1900, again the French, British and 6 other nations who formed the 8-nation alliance looted the city and stole precious treasures. Therefore, in the 1930s, China officials were now adamant that this would not happen again. The curators of the museum hurriedly picked out the most irreplaceable treasured artifacts. 19,500 crates containing around 250,000 of China's most precious pieces were packaged with great care and nailed in boxes ready for the journey. This included 28,000 pieces of porcelain, 8,000 paintings and another 8,000 works in jade, and the entire Qing archive. Now, the crates started leaving the Forbidden City by train, and the first consignments headed to Shanghai, as there were foreign concessions there, and it was thought that that was the safe place to be. They made it safely, and they were first stored in an old hospital in the old French concession. Now, believe it or not, the museum in Beijing was still functioning and even packed some other treasures to be shown at the International Exhibition of Chinese Art in London in 1935, and sent them west by British Navy ship HMS Suffolk. Now, by the end of 1936, the artifacts are moved to a purpose-built storage facility in Nanjing, which is waterproof and bomb-proof. But in 1937, all-out war breaks out and they become vulnerable once again. By November 1937, the Japanese were only a few miles away from Nanjing, so it moves the crates to the docks, has Yangtze River steamships, and starts moving them west, upriver, inland. The shipment then breaks into 3 parts, and one small shipment containing the rarest, most valuable objects heads to the small city of Anshu outside Guian, where the curators had found a large, dry, bomb-proof cave to store the relics in. The second batch headed much further along the river, and over 1.5 years travelled to Sichuan province to Chongqing, then through the 3 gorges on small steamers, before switching to bamboo rafts and being hauled to just west of the city of Leshan.
There, they're stored in ancestral halls and temples a long way from the front lines. 9,500 crates stay there for 7 years.
Now this sort of reminds me of when Hitler was approaching Paris in 1940, and the Louvre and other museums in Paris boxed up their treasures and sent them around the country, and reportedly even buried some items. It was thought that only 1,800 cases were packed in Paris. That's only 1/9 of what was happening in China. The final cases head west to Suzhou and Shaanxi province by train, and then on trucks over the Qinling Mountains in winter, which rise to over 12,000 feet, before eventually making it to Ermeishan in Sichuan province too.
Out of the 19,500 crates of artifacts, only a few hundred were ever broken or damaged, which is testament to the care taken by the thousands of people and curators who packed these cases and moved them over thousands of kilometers.
By late 1947, most of the artifacts had made their way back down the Yangtze River to Nanjing, the capital, and there they lived happily ever after. Or did they? Well, no, because by December 1947, it was clear that the Republic of China was not going to survive. The Communist Party was making huge gains in Manchuria and other northern areas, and Chiang Kai-shek's government was suddenly under threat. The Chinese government then orders the curators to split the collector. 3,000 crates of the rarest, finest pieces are taken to Taiwan and form the collection of the National Palace Museum in Taipei.
The museum now holds about 600,000 pieces and is one of Taiwan's most visited tourist attractions. And I went there a few years ago, and so today, headed into the Palace Museum. This will be my 3rd of all 3 Palace Museums, so I can't wait. And time for today's word of the day, and it is peregrination, which means a long and meandering journey. No, not me walking around the front here in West Kowloon, but the journey of the crates out west to Sichuan province. So there we go, peregrination. Kids, see if you can use that next time in your narrative writing. Peregrination. This is the face of disappointment on this hot day when you think you've spotted a Misty Whippy ice cream and you get there and it's a burger van. The last thing I want is hot food right now. Never mind, let's see if we can find an ice cream parlour somewhere. Right, let's not hang around in this heat any longer. Let's head inside the museum, check out these treasures. No better place to start than gallery number 2, which is Life and Art in the Forbidden City, 1644 up until 1911 during the Qing Dynasty. Let's go. Just to think, a 19th century Qing Dynasty emperor would have looked into that mirror one morning at one time in his life. An ancient chessboard, Chinese chess. To think an emperor would have used these pieces hundreds of years ago. What's really cool at the end, you get a chance to practice your Chinese calligraphy on this interactive calligraphy display.
Built at a cost of 4.3 billion Hong Kong dollars, the Palace Museum highlights Chinese culture, contributes to the strengthening of cultural identity among Hong Kong residents, and promotes a sense of pride and connection to their heritage, and a greater understanding of Chinese history.
Not a bad little viewing deck up here on the third floor. Very excited because I have seen this painting so many times on the internet, and it's actually here in the Palace Museum. This dates from the early 1600s and is painted with ink and colour on silk. It's of a very early Ming Dynasty emperor. This is the Emperor Zhu Changklo, and right next to him, 100 years preceding him, we have a portrait of the Emperor Yingzong from the early 1500s. Okay, explorers, what do you think this strange chest was used for? Well, it was actually one of the first refrigerators in the world. It's like an ice chest that would cool things down. There's holes in the top to let the cool air out in those hot months as well. And it's thought that Emperor Puyi, the last Qing emperor, actually used this one, even though this allegedly was built in around the early 1700s. just speaking to a docent who works here, and she was telling me that during the revolution of 48-49, during the Civil War, a lot of things were actually sold without either side knowing, and ended up here in Hong Kong being sold in the markets on Hollywood Road. And it was the people of Hong Kong who actually bought these things and then gifted them back to the Palace Museum in Beijing. And if you want another great view, get up to the top floor here. This is a fabulous panoramic view of the western entrance to the harbour. Now, I've just spoken to a docent here. We were speaking about the Chinese treasures being evacuated from Beijing, and she said down on the first floor in gallery number 1, there is a special little exhibit, part of it, to tell you all about it. So let's head down there and finish off the tour. Here it is, an actual chest that was used to evacuate all those artefacts in the 1930s. We've even got a picture of the British on-board ship taking some of the artefacts to the 1935 Chinese civilization exhibition in London. Well, thanks for joining me today here at the Palace Museum. Hope you've enjoyed the little tour around and learning about how all those treasures were evacuated from Beijing back in the 1930s. Join me next time where we go around Hong Kong and find out some more hidden treasures. Bye for now.